What is it about the Big Bang Theory that just has captivated an entire generation or two now?
Oh, where do we start here? It really begins with the characters and the writing because without either, you don't have a show. And the actors were incredible in these roles. The writing was absolutely stellar. And these were characters we had never really seen on screen before. Two theoretical physicists, the girl next door where she's got the street smarts. They've got the intellectual smarts. They don't know how to talk to her. She can talk to them. It was a dynamic that was really fresh, and it was interesting at the time because who doesn't relate to feeling like you can excel in one area of your life and then be completely at a loss in something else? And it was so refreshing to see the ways in which these characters moved through their lives and the complications they went through and the things that they had to face, whether it was in their relationships or in their work. And that's what made it so universal and so fun to watch.
I want to dig back into your past because in your line of business, right? There's a difference
Yeah.
between the rumor mill, sensationalism, and actual reporting. But you gravitate to the last one, even though it doesn't garner as much attention. Why is that?
Well, I'm really thankful because, I have always been about talking directly to the source, to the person, to getting those interviews from the people you want to hear about and making sure everything is factually correct. There is nothing more important than that. And I truly believe that if you're able to create a trustworthy relationship with anybody that you interview, that will allow for great, interesting stories to be told. And I can't think of a better example than the Big Bang Theory book that I wrote, because spending so much time with this cast and with the producers and the creatives allowed them to be honest about their experiences in a way that they probably would not have been before. And doing so allowed for those stories that so many outlets picked up because they couldn't believe that these things actually happened, whether it was Johnny and Kaylee falling in love outside of the show or, difficulties that certain cast members went through or casting stories that were heartbreaking. And people were stunned by the things they admitted. I was surprised, yes, because these are great stories that most people would want to hold on for their memoirs, you think, but I also wasn't surprised because I think with journalism, it really is about developing those relationships and working with the talent. And if you can do that and you can do it in an honorable and trustworthy way that makes them feel the safest because they know that whatever they say is going to be handled delicately, then you create those stories that everybody's going to want to hear about. And it's the reason that I was so proud. My most important career achievement is when the Big Bang Theory book went on to become a New York Times bestseller, because to me that was a prime example of this is what happens when you tell accurate stories and heartfelt stories that really allow a person to open up and tell the juicy stuff that people want to know and they often read about, but do it in a way where everything is coming from them themselves. So, I know it's easy to fall into the sensationalism trap and to read things and think, oh, I hope this is true or whatever, but there's nothing more important than making sure you have a factually correct story and you're going right to the source. And that's why to have people want to tell you their stories and to trust it is the most important thing you can have. And I'm so, so proud of that. So that's a long way to answer your question, but I think the more that we have that in journalism and storytelling, the more that it really shifts people's perspectives about what they require of their journalists.
We are talking about The Big Bang Theory, the definitive inside story of the epic hit series, available now on literally everywhere. But with that said, we go back to when, part of journalism is picking the topic and picking something that you want to write about. How was that process for you? And was it a love for the show or a love for telling, finding out this story needs to be told?
It was a bit of both. You always want to discover stories both as a fan, because I think, if I'm interested, then hopefully other people are, and what do they want to know? And it's also about, you know, giving the respect to a show that is so incredibly deserving of it. So, so it was really about thinking, like, what are the stories that I want to read? What do fans want to know? And what has been written about the show? And find a way to find new stories that aren't going to bore people and can kind of really shed light on a new angle. And that's really what I wanted to do. It's what I always want to do with anything is just think, okay, if somebody has read about something so many times or something else, there's got to be other different angles we can explore here. And that's what I try to do. I think I did it with the book. I hope I did. And then it's what I try to do with the podcast too.
You remind me of a young Nancy Drew. Did you always want to be a writer and how did you come about getting into this field of reporting?
Not exactly. If you ask my mom and dad, I think when I was 4 years old, I said I wanted to be a Jack in the Box, like an actual, like, you know, toy Jack in the Box come out of the box. I mean, I don't know where that came from at all. So definitely not early on. I did know that I wanted to work in media or news. I was obsessed with the Today Show growing up. I wanted to be there. I wanted to watch it every day. I consumed it like it was food because I couldn't get enough. But I was also a really shy kid, and I didn't know how I was going to do this as a career when just talking to people was so difficult for me. Obviously, I came out of my shell, and I talk about that even in the introduction to the book about what kind of spurred that and how I was able to do it. But yeah, I never thought that my career would go this way. Also, you know, the industry, the entertainment industry, the journalism industry has changed so much since I was a kid that I couldn't even have imagined half of this because we didn't even have podcasts growing up. I mean, we had radio, obviously, but we didn't have podcasts. I'm also dyslexic. I never thought I would be writing a book because I don't typically read books. I read magazines, I read newspapers, but I didn't really read books because it was such a challenge for me. So to then be writing a book that goes on to be a New York Times bestseller, I mean, it's truly beyond anything that I could have imagined. But that's why I also say to kids and adults too that, you know, don't limit yourself to something just because you think, oh, I'm not equipped to do this or I can't do this because of something. If you find your way in and if you're passionate about something, then there really isn't a limit to what you can achieve. And I know that sounds kind of cheesy in a way, but it really is true that you have to trust that your passion and your interest in something can unlock opportunities that you never could have imagined doing so before.
What a pitch. I don't know how hard was the pitch, the official Big Bang Theory podcast, was it for Max and Warner Brothers? And I mean, I'm assuming they were slightly receptive.
Yes, they were. They were the ones that actually kind of came up with it. And I had lunch with the publicist from Warner Brothers Television one day, and this was a few months before my book was coming out. And they said to me, they're like, you know, we're looking for more podcasts. Is there anything you think would make a great podcast with Warner Brothers IP? And I said, well, yeah. I was like, you know, the Big Bang book is coming out in a couple months. I think that would make a great podcast. And they were like, great, we'll start the talks. And I was like, okay. And I was excited. But, you know, like with anything in this business, you're always a little afraid, too. You never know if it's going to come to fruition. So I was always a little, you know, cautiously optimistic, as they say. But I was so thrilled when this got the green light and Max partnered with Warner Brothers. Because it has been in the works for a couple of years at least. So to finally have it now out in the world and we're releasing one new episode a week every Monday, it's the most rewarding thing. And I just want to do more of it.
Not only host, but executive producer, Jessica, for the official Big Bang Theory podcast. I mean, you cover like literally every single episode. Does it ever do you get tired of it at all?
I don't get tired of it. I get tired just because I'm always working. I feel like, but I don't get tired of it. It's such a joy, and I know that, you know, I'm doing this for the fans, and they deserve it all because they're the reason that I have this career. They're the reason that the actors and the producers and the writers have their careers, and I just want to do right by them. So I never get tired of it, and when I get to sit down in that chair with the guest for the week, it is the most exciting, rewarding thing for me. And I just want to make them look good. I want them to be able to tell their stories and be excited to do it. It can be a little daunting, especially for those that are just, behind the scenes crew members that are not used to being on a podcast. That can be a little scary, but I want it to be a really comfortable, fun environment where they step into our studio, and it's just a really fun, playful world that we can escape all the difficulties of life and just focus on this hilarious series for at least 45 minutes.
Wow, thank you so much. You did save the best for last, and I appreciate all the energy you brought.
Sweet, Jose.
Oh, thank you so much, and good luck with the official Big Bang Theory podcast, New York Times bestseller. Jessica, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Jose. I hope you have a great day.